A very good morning and welcome to the Talk of the Town. I'm Sandro Satyajit. We spoke with Swastika Arulingam on the topic New Bills and Assault on Freedom of Expression. She spoke with Newsfirst's Charlene Benedict, and this is what she had to say.
Do you think that there are efforts on the part of those in power to silently take steps to ensure that people will not be able to rise up in the future if a 2022 economic crisis repeats itself?
I think the upper middle classes and the middle classes are doing okay despite the rise in prices and so on. But there is a large class of people, I always say this, there's a large class of people who are not eating in this country. They are only eating one meal per day. So the situation has not normalized. This is also, we can also get into the politics of the Aragale when we speak about it, but the situation for a large group of people have not normalized, and that is also the reason why we have a mass exodus of people from all classes of society. But despite this happening, I do agree with you that people are not coming into the streets and protesting. And one of the reasons for that is that the government systematically, since the Aragale came to an end, the government systematically placed military, riot squads, police onto the street almost disproportionately, and gave a very clear message to people that if you do come and protest on the streets, we would crush the protest, we would prison you, we would harass you, we would file cases against you, and so on.
Right.
So because of that, the protests have been silenced on the street.
Okay.
So while that is happening on one side, now we are also seeing that the government is creating this legal architecture through this online safety bill, through the anti-terror bill, and so on and so forth, to create a legal structure whereby in the future, as you correctly said, people will be terrorized from even coming to the streets and exercising their freedom of association, freedom of assembly, as well as freedom of expression, and so on.
So moving on, Swastika, what are these steps at least that the government are taking to ensure that people will not be able to raise their voice in the future?
Right now, starting from this year, there has been a few bills which have come on. For instance, the Bureau of Rehabilitation Bill, which I would call a very similar bill to, or very similar act to, the creation of forced labor camps. If you look at the bill, there are provisions to create forced labor camps in that act. So that was passed, in fact. So similarly, now the government is coming up with the online safety bill.
That was passed with amendments, though.
Yes, but the provision on the labor camps are still intact in the bill. But of course, certain amendments were made as per the Supreme Court guidelines. So
according to the Rehabilitation Bill or the Rehabilitation Act that is now in force, those who have been addicted to drugs or substance abuse can be sent to forced labor camp. It's
not termed as forced labor camps, but if you go through the act, it actually talks about placing people in these rehabilitation centers to productively use them for economic purposes and so on. So what does productively using them for economic purposes mean? So of course these are nice words which are being placed inside the Bureau of Rehabilitation Bill, but of course because of the Supreme Court's very strong intervention, the scope of the bill has been reduced. But after the bill has been passed, we're hearing of stories where people have been sent to drug rehabilitation and the families have been unable to trace them. They have to go through many administrative obstacles to in fact find where their family members have been placed. So we're already hearing stories of this nature coming out. But answering your question on what's happening now, there are two bills which are horrendous and which should not exist in a democracy to begin with. One is the online safety bill and the other is the anti-terror bill which is coming into place. The online safety bill is something very novel. It aims to create an online safety commission,
right,
which is in the future going to have lots of powers to determine what is truth and what is not in the future. The commission will have almost exclusive powers to decide what is truth and what is not. The Anti-Terror Act or the bill, of course, is the part 2 of 2.0, as some people had called it, of the PTA, whereby Terror Act is going to continue with a few amendments and changes. Some people have called the Anti-Terror Bill the next phase of the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Swastika, what exactly are the provisions in, at least just like you said, the anti-terrorism bill has been placed on the order paper but not tabled in Parliament, the online safety bill. Now, when you at least read the short title of this bill, Online Safety. That's a good thing, right?
So the act itself, and that's the irony of it, right? The act itself calls itself the Online Safety Bill, or the bill calls itself Online Safety. But if you look at the introduction,
the preamble.
The preamble to the bill, it says to establish the Online Safety Commission to make provisions to prohibit online communication of certain statements of fact in Sri Lanka. It says to make provisions to prohibit online communication of certain statements of fact in Sri Lanka. So that itself, I think, summarizes the intention of this bill. That is to prohibit certain statements of facts in Sri Lanka. And when we go through this bill, it has several provisions. When you go through this bill, it becomes obvious that it is not about online safety of vulnerable groups of people. When we think of online safety, we think of, let's say, women and children who are subjected to harassment, who are subjected to abuse online, vulnerable groups of people, the LGBTQI community who are subjected to harassment. But this bill, even though there are certain tokenistic provisions to protect these groups of people, by and large, this is about the state taking control over narratives which go online in terms of critiquing the state, in terms of dissenting to what the state is doing, and in terms of, if you look at the structure of this bill, it is also about harassing people through summoning them to the Online Safety Commission, summoning them to courts, filing charges against them in courts, sending directives by the commission, and if you don't comply by that, then it becomes a crime. So it's about harassing online activists, online journalists, people who express their opinions online, simply about harassing them, if you look at the structure of this act.
That's a wrap of Talk of the Town. It's now back to the Morning Fix with Dom and Asanka.